everybody, I'm John Good, and welcome to my nationwide premiere of my good destinations. So, as you may don't know about it, because I did destinated all of the countries like America, Europe, Asia, and stuff like that. I don't have a passport. What about going to Europe or China, or even Canada or something like that, but somewhere like that. But that's when I love America. So in today's episode, we're talking about Maryland. What is Maryland, you might ask? Maryland is home of a world famous crabs. It is the it. So when basically you don't know, this is Maryland, home of a world famous, and home of a Baltimore Orioles from baseball, and the Baltimore Ravens from the National Football League. Then number one is Swallow Falls State Park. This high mountain park is home of some stunning sights, including the state's tallest free-falling waterfall, Muddy Creek Falls. Number 2, Camp David. Camp David has been a favorite weekend getaway spot for many U.S. presidents. Was it named after the grandson of President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Number 3, Baltimore is one of the number one cities in the country. Maryland's largest city is home of many historic sites, and it has been an important seaport since in the 1600s. Number 4, Chesapeake Bay. The Chesapeake Bay is one of Maryland's most distinctive natural features. Visitors enjoy boating, fishing, and more. So on the first chapter is land and wildlife. Maryland is sometimes called America in miniature. It's easy to see how is that earned this nickname. This small middle Atlantic state is packed with a variety of landforms and wildlife. Within its borders are mountains, farms, cities, and beaches. There's a lot to see and do in Maryland. From ocean to the mountains. Maryland has many different types of terrain. The state's southeastern tip touches the Atlantic Ocean. Farther inland, there are marshes, wetlands, and valleys. In the far west are the Appalachian, Elevate, and Blue Ridge mountain ranges. And Appalachians are the oldest mountains in North America. Wild horses in an Assateague Island. Wild horses has been living on the Assateague an island for hundreds of years. How did they get under this 37-mile long island under the Atlantic Ocean? No one is sure, as they could be offspring of horses that were brought to work on the island. According to the popular legend, the horses escaped from the Spanish shipwreck. Remains from shipwrecks has been found in the area, so the legend could be true. The island is divided between Maryland and Virginia. It became a national park in 1965, and more than 300 horses live there today. One Big Bay. The large mountain, a large body of water nearly cuts Maryland in half. This is the Chesapeake Bay. The Chesapeake is the largest estuary in North America. An estuary is in the point of where fresh water and salt water mix. Many plants and animals depend on the Chesapeake Bay, whether or not. When it comes to the weather, many types of weather like clouds, dark clouds like light clouds, and stuff like that, because Maryland has some of everything. In summer, thunderstorms, lightning, and floods are common. It is humid, and temperatures can reach up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. In winter, the eastern part of the state is mild temperatures. The western mountains can get ice storms and more than 100 inches of snow. Kayaking is becoming increasingly popular in the Potomac River. And the maximum to 109 degrees Fahrenheit, and the minimum temperature is negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Growing things and many trees, flowers, and grasses can grow in Maryland mild weather. In fact, the state is home of more than 3,000 plant species. Scientists know there were even more species in the past. They believe in about 300 plants have disappeared in the state of the last 400 years because of a pollution, development, and other changes to the planet. Creatures of all kinds. Maryland has numbers of kinds of birds, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, and fish. White-tailed deer, foxes, beavers, and raccoons are found in much of the state. There are various types of frogs, lizards, and turtles. There are a number of ducks, herons, and songbirds. Almost 100 types of animals are endangered here. One of them is in Baltimore Oriole, which is the Maryland state bird. I'm a huge Oriole fan. Check this out. I'm just wearing the Oriole shirt, and it is a Maryland state bird. Because I'm very good. I'm a huge Oriole fan. Do you love the Orioles? I do. So in our second chapter is government. The city of Annapolis has been served as Maryland's capital since 1694. The historic city was also the capital of the United States, was breathed in time in 1783 and 1784. Excuse me. And today it is where Maryland's elected officials gather to make, interpret, and enforce state laws. These leaders also oversee a wide range of important services, such as the state's educational system and law enforcement. 3 branches. Maryland's state government has 3 branches: the executive and the legislative, and the judicial. Each branch has different powers. All 3 must work together in order to run the state. The founders of Maryland understood was the important to have checks and balances. This means none of the branches have too much power over the others. We have at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, excuse me, a worker makes adjustments to the piece of the Hubble Space Telescope close to the capital because Maryland is also because Maryland is also so close to the U.S. capital, Washington, D.C. It is home of and to many federal government offices. The National Security Agency and the U.S. Census Bureau are are both headquartered in Maryland. The U.S. military and the National Aeronautics and the Space Administration, or NASA, also have agencies there. Maryland's national role. Each state sends elected officials to the president to represent in the U.S. Congress. Like every state, Maryland has 2 senators. The U.S. House of Representatives relies on the state's population to terminate its numbers. Maryland has 8 representatives in the House. Every 4 years, states votes on the next U.S. president. Each state is granted a number of the electoral votes based on its members in the Congress. With 2 senators and 8 representatives, Maryland has 10 electoral votes. It is representing Maryland, and it has 0% has 0.6% is Native American and Alaskan Native, 6.5% is Asian, 0.1 is a Native Hawaiian and or the Pacific Islander, 2.7% is two or more races, and 9.5 is Pacific or Latino. And this African American has 30.5%, and Cajun is 52%. And we have 50% of Marylanders were born in other countries. 17% is speaking in a language other than English at home. 38% of a population have been degree beyond high school. 66% on their own homes. 86% living in the cities. 89% of a population graduating high school. What presents in Maryland? Okay, well, you might ask, states chose the specific animals, plants, and objects to represent the values of the characteristics of the island that it is people. Find out why these symbols are chosen to represent Maryland, or discover surprising characteristics about them. The seal. The shield of a Maryland's seal shows about 2 coats of arms or family symbols of the Carvet family. This family helped start of a Maryland colony. The farmer on the left and the fisher on the right hold the shield. Flag. Maryland's flag matched in the shield on the state seal. The 2 designs on are Calvert family coats of arms. Black-eyed Susan, state flower. This sunflower with colors matches the state flag has long been popular in Maryland and it's even the subject of the song. Blue crab, state occasion. The blue crab's scientific name, Condylis spidis, means the beautiful summer that is savory. Smith Island cake, state dessert. The 10-layer cake comes from Smith Island to difficult reach island in the Chesapeake Bay with a culture all of its own. Yoasting state sport. Maryland has been yoasting tournaments since colonial times. Patunet Riverstone, state gem. Patutin River stone is a type of a quartz that is found only in Maryland. The state bird is a Baltimore Oriole. With a similar coloring to the state flag, this bird provides the name of the state's professional baseball team. Did you know Cal Ripken Jr. has reached 2,131 consecutive games on this September 6, 1995? I remember watching this. Let's talk about the history of Maryland for just a sec. Maryland has long and very an interesting story. Native people first settled in the land that became Maryland about 12,000 years ago. Later, it was a British colony and one of the original 13 states. Maryland has played an important role in a country for more than 200 years. Today, it is home to some of the world's most famous universities and companies. First people, archaeologists. Believe people have lived in Maryland for more than 12,000 years. How do they know? They studied clues from the stolen tools and brutal sites. By about 1000 CE, thousands of Native Americans live in Maryland. They hunted a fish for food. They also grew crops such as beans, squash, and corn. Native Americans, around 1300, the Native American group called the Algonquins began to move into Maryland. They gathered oysters from the sea. They hollowed out trees and made canoes. They turned wood into bows and arrows. Sometimes Algonquins traded what they grew or made with other native people. They live in the dome-shaped houses called wigwams. These homes have wooden frames. They were covered with animal skins, and bark to keep out the cold. Many different native groups used wigwams. The Europeans arrived in the late 1400s, in the early 1500s. European explorers traveled across the ocean. France, Spain, and England all wanted the land near the Chesapeake Bay. But the English built the area's first settlement in 1632, and King Charles I gave land to the Celsius Calvert Lord Baltimore to create the colony of Maryland. These these were hard times for the Native Americans. Many died of diseases brought by the Europeans. Often were forced to leave their land. Native Americans battled English settlers in the Maryland colony sometime around 1640. A new nation. Maryland is one of the original 13 British colonies. Colonists were citizens of Great Britain, but they did not have a say in the British government. The government demanded the colonists pay high taxes, causing many colonists to become unhappy with British rule. During the Revolutionary War, in the year 1775 through 1783, the colonies fought to become independent from Great Britain. In 1788, Maryland became the seventh state of the new United States. The question of a salary. Many people in Maryland were farmers. They wanted to work on the workers into to run their farms, and some of used in the slaves from Africa during the Civil War, 1861 through 1865. Maryland had to decide if it would side with the whole North or South. The North wanted to end slavery, and the South did not. Maryland remained with the North, although many people in the state did not agree. Maryland was also the site of one of the Civil War's biggest battles. On September 17th, 1862, Northern and Southern forces clashed near Antietam Creek in the town of Sharpsburg. The Battle of Antietam, that was the first battle of a war to take the place in the North. More than 22,000 people were injured or killed that day. Making it is the bloodiest battle ever to take place in the U.S. soil. In the timeline of Maryland events is April 28, 1788. Maryland becomes a seventh state. And the 1632 King Charles I of the Great Britain grants charter to Celsius Calder to create the Maryland colony. 1791, Maryland donates land for the new U.S. capital, Washington, D.C. 1862, Battle of Antietam. The bloodiest battle of the Civil War takes place in Maryland. 1864, slavery ends in Maryland. 1904, the Great Baltimore Fire destroys downtown Baltimore. 1992, Orioles Park and Camden Yards opens. 1995, Indianapolis celebrates the 300th anniversary as Maryland's capital. Changing times. Many things have changed in the United States between 1900 through 2000. Women won the right to vote. The country fought in their two world wars, went through in the Great Depression. Many people lost their jobs and their money during this terrible economic crisis. African Americans demanded their civil rights and an end of segregation. Maryland experienced both good times and hard times during this century. During World War II, many women went to work in the Bethlehem Fairfield shipyards in Baltimore. Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. Have you heard of an Underground Railroad? It might sound like a train, but it was an actual in a series of safe houses and escaped salaries. The houses were owned in the free African Americans in the north and were wine alleys. After escaping the slavery, people hidden in these places as they traveled north to freedom. Harriet Tubman was one of the railroad's most famous conductors. Tubman was a former slave. She bravely had led more than 300 people to freedom. She was born in Dorchester County, Maryland, in 1822. Lacrosse was an official team sport in Maryland. Here, let's talk about the culture. Maryland offers a lots of fun things to see and do. Do you like to run and throw? You should try lacrosse. Lacrosse is it is the oldest sport in North America. Native Americans have played in the hundreds of years. Do you like to listen to music, going to the museums, watching in the dance performance? You will find all of that and more in Maryland. The state is an opera, theater, dancing companies, and symphonies. Sports fans. People who love sports who will find and a lot of love in Maryland. There are two professional sport teams. Maryland's baseball is the Baltimore Orioles. The football team is the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore Ravens has been owned. Baltimore Ravens owned by NFL. Baltimore Orioles owned by Major League Baseball. Maryland is also an unusual state sport, yoasting. This sport originated in the Middle Ages. Players ride on a horseback and are trying to spur hanging rings using a long pole called the lance. The Baltimore Ravens get their name from the raven. The poem was by the famous Baltimore writer Edgar Allan Poe. Pimlico Racecourse is home to the annual Preakness Stakes, Maryland's many celebrations. To enjoy watching horse races, the Preakness Stakes is a famous race held each year in Baltimore, drawing huge crowds. Maryland also hosts many other annual events and celebrations. You can attend a Maryland seafood restaurant in Annapolis, Maryland State Fair in Timonium, Artscape in Baltimore, and much more. Where do people work? In the past, many Maryland residents earned their living from farming, fishing, and manufacturing. Those jobs are still important, but today more people work in the service sector: teachers, doctors, police officers, and waiters. There are all examples of the service jobs. Many Maryland jobs are in fields related to the healthcare and technology. One of the country's most famous hospitals, Johns Hopkins, is in Baltimore. Education matters. Education is important to people of Maryland. In 1839, one of the country's first public high schools opened in Baltimore. The state has many well-known colleges and universities, including the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis. More than 1/3 in Maryland residents have a college degree. That helps them to learn a good living. Although the average income in Maryland is the highest in the country, many people live in poverty. Graduates of the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis throw their hats into the air in the celebration. That was history. Maryland's many flavors. There's tasty food in every part of Maryland. Travel to the eastern side of the state and try the famous blue crabs. Trek to the valleys of a fresh produce such as sweet corn, tomatoes, and apples. The city of Baltimore is home of many different athletic groups. They're all favorite dishes to share. And don't leave Maryland without trying the official state dessert, the Smith Island cake. Ready to visit Maryland? Maryland is the smallest. Maryland is small, but it is full of surprises. It is coastal beaches and the forested slopes, and it is mountains, and there are many different places to explore. Its population is diverse and a multicultural. It is numerous historic sites tell many stories about America's past. You can go crabbing, watch yachting, or hike the state's many trails. Marylanders and visitors alike agree. Maryland has a little something for everyone. Inner Harbor in Baltimore hosts New Year's Eve celebrations, home of world famous fireworks, and some Baltimore local performers. So I wanted to tell you, yeah, as you kind of, I was having a lot of fun going on here. I learned about Maryland and about an eternity because the blue crabs are very important to eat. So, Preakness Stakes is one of the most historic sports in Baltimore history. So, if you enjoyed my Good Destinations video, subscribe to JGN and follow us on social media. And until next time, America, and remember, I'll see you in the next destination.